The moment my dad and brother told me I was homeless, they did not know the house they just sold was never really theirs. They did not know every sloppy signature was more evidence I was sending to the sheriff and the VA office. From my balcony in Okinawa, I had already turned that house into a legal trap. This is not just a family fight. It is the price they pay for treating a soldier's daughter like an ATM and accidentally selling the unsellable. My name is Carly Grant. The taxi door clicked shut with a hollow, final sound, echoing in the too quiet street of Redwood Springs, Oregon. I stood on the sidewalk, the chill of a Pacific Northwest afternoon cutting through my uniform. Dust from the drive clung to my boots. I pulled my sea bag from the trunk, the familiar weight a comfort, the only constant in a life spent moving. After 6 months in Okinawa, I was home. Or so I thought. They were waiting for me, on the porch of my house, the house I bought with my own money, the house I patched and painted and bled for after my second deployment. My father, Harold Grant, and my brother, Mason. Harold stood with his arms crossed, his posture radiating a forced, righteous authority. Mason, my deadbeat brother, the perpetual finder of himself, leaned against the railing, a can of beer already in his hand at 2 p.m. He had a look on his face I knew well, a smug, greasy satisfaction. There was no welcome home, no good to see you, kid. I gripped the strap of my sea bag. The taxi pulled away, its engine fading, leaving me in a silence that felt loud and wrong. "You're homeless now," Harold said. His voice was flat, as if he were reporting the weather, not detonating my life. "We sold the house." Mason took a sloppy sip of his beer and let out a short, barking laugh. "Marines do not stay put anyway. Carly, what do you need a house for?" He gestured with his can, sloshing liquid onto the porch boards I had stained myself. "Always deploying, never here. We needed it." The world did not just stop, it shattered, but it did so in silence. It was a mute explosion. The sound of a bird in the oak tree across the street vanished. The pounding in my ears, the rush of blood, became the only sound in the universe. Everything slowed down. I watched a single dead leaf skitter across the driveway, each tiny scrape against the asphalt lasting an eternity. My heart hammered against my ribs. A trapped bird. But on the outside, I was perfectly still. My face, trained by years of Marine Corps discipline, did not move. I did not blink. I just watched them. "Family sacrifices for family, Carly," Harold said, his voice rising, taking on that familiar tone of martyrdom he used whenever he was about to justify something awful. He stepped forward, as if to plead a case he had already rehearsed 100 times. Mason was in trouble, real trouble. His life was threatened. "Legit threatened," Mason chimed in, suddenly serious, as if he were a character in a bad gangster movie. "These guys do not play." "We had to," Harold insisted, his eyes shifting away from mine, unable to hold my gaze. "We had to use the house to save your brother, to get him clear." Mason puffed out his chest, emboldened by his role as the rescued victim. "Had to take care of some people you do not want to mess with," he bragged, jingling something in his pocket. It was probably the change from whatever cash he had left. "It took a lot, but it's handled. We're clear now." His words, "we're clear now," hung in the cold air. They had used my stability to pay for his chaos. They had sold my foundation to settle his debts. The sheer, naked selfishness of it was breathtaking. They expected me to cry. They expected me to scream, to break down on the sidewalk, to ask them, "How could you?" That is what they were prepared for. So I did something else. I smiled. It started small, just a tightening at the corners of my mouth. Then it grew, a slow, cold smile that did not touch my eyes. It was the smile of someone who has just seen the enemy's entire battle plan laid out on the table. It unnerved them. I watched the satisfaction drain from Mason's face, replaced by a flicker of confusion. Harold's self-righteous expression faltered. He frowned. "What's so funny?" Harold snapped, his voice suddenly defensive. There is nothing funny about this. We saved your brother's life. The house, I said, my voice quiet, but it carried in the still air. The house you two just sold. The thing is, I let the sentence hang. I watched them. Mason shifted his weight, his bravado gone. Harold's frown deepened, a line of genuine fear now tracing its way onto his features. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, charged with everything I was not saying. They thought this was the first betrayal. They thought they had pulled a fast one on me while I was on the other side of the world, thousands of miles away in Okinawa. But this was not the first time. This was just the last. They had no idea that I had smelled this coming. I had smelled the desperation in Harold's curt emails. I had heard the lie in the way Mason was suddenly never available to come to the phone. I had felt the scam in the pit of my stomach weeks ago. Standing on my small balcony, listening to the Okinawan night sounds, I looked past them, at the front door. My door. The bright red paint was peeling slightly, something I had meant to fix before I left. I looked at the window to the left of it, the one where I always hung my small Marine Corps flag when I was home. It was gone, of course. In that moment, I realized the word family had become a shell. These two men, who shared my blood, had fallen so far below the minimum standard of human decency that they were unrecognizable. They were just two men who had tried to steal from me. I could have ended it right there. I had the documents, I had the facts, I had the law, coiled and ready to strike, right there in the folder tucked inside my sea bag. I could have unleashed the entire storm on them, right there on the sidewalk. But I did not. I wanted them to understand. I wanted you, whoever is listening to this, to understand the whole journey. I wanted them to feel the weight of every single choice they made that led to this precise moment. This was not just about a house. This was about their assumption that I was just a paycheck, an ATM, a resource to be plundered while I was busy serving my country. They thought they had left me with nothing. They had no idea that I had left them with nothing. No way out. I pulled the strap of my sea bag higher on my shoulder. The smile faded from my face, replaced by that same calm, cold stillness. Before I tell you what that house really was, I said, finally breaking the silence, I have to take you back to Okinawa, where my counter-op began, with one seemingly harmless email. 3 weeks before I stood on that sidewalk, I was 4,700 miles away at Camp Nolan, Okinawa. The air was so thick you could drink it, a heavy, wet blanket of heat that never lifted. Day or night, the smell of the ocean was everywhere, mixed with diesel fumes and the sweet, rotting scent of tropical flowers. I was halfway through a 6-month rotation, a rare deployment that had a kind of stability to it. No mortars, no imminent threat, just the steady, grinding routine of maintenance, training, and waiting. It was in this routine that I had space to think about home. Not home as in my father's house, but my home, the small 2-bedroom bungalow on Cedar Street in Redwood Springs. It had taken me 8 years to get that house. I bought it after my second deployment. Using my VA loan, it was a wreck. The porch sagged, the paint was peeling, and the plumbing was a joke, but it was mine. I spent every leave, every 72-hour pass I could wrangle, working on it. I learned how to frame a wall, how to lay tile, how to rewire a damn light fixture. That house was my anchor, in a life defined by constant movement, by sea bags and barracks rooms and foreign soil. That house was the one piece of the world that belonged only to me. It was the only place I was not Sergeant Grant. I was just Carly. The calls home had started getting weird, gaps of silence that felt too long. My father, Harold, who used to be all booming enthusiasm, now sounded perpetually annoyed. His voice was clipped, distracted. "Oh, you are still in Japan," he would say, as if my deployment was a personal inconvenience. "Well, things are tough here, Carly, really tough." "What is going on, Dad?" "Just life." He would sigh, a long-suffering sound I was beginning to hate. "It is not easy, you know. You would not understand. You chose the military over this family a long time ago." That was his new favorite line. It was a knife he twisted every chance he got. It did not matter that my paycheck had bailed Mason out of 3 different jams. It did not matter that I sent money home every month to help with the bills, even though Harold had his own pension. Then came the news that Mason had moved in with him. Mason, my older brother, the 40-year-old man-child locked in a state of permanent finding himself. His latest venture, a craft sports bar startup, had imploded spectacularly. He had financed it with money from people you do not borrow from, and now he was broke, terrified, and living in Harold's spare room, which meant he was living off Harold, which, by extension, meant he was living off me. The real alarm bell rang during a video call. The connection was choppy, the screen freezing on Harold's disgruntled face. "Mason is just down on his luck, that is all," Harold was saying, his eyes darting off screen. "He just slipped. It happens. It happens a lot with him, Dad." "Do not judge your brother," he snapped. "You do not know." His voice was drowned out by another, unfamiliar voice in the background, a man's voice, gravelly and impatient. "Just ask her," the voice said. "Has she sent the money yet?" My blood went cold. "Who was that?" I asked, keeping my voice level. Harold's face went pale. He fumbled with the phone. "What? No one? Just the TV. Signal is bad. Carly, I will call you back." The screen went black. He did not call back. I tried twice, both times. It went straight to his voicemail. The next day, I got a text message, not from Harold, but from Mason's phone. It was just 5 words. "Call Dad before you come home." No hey, no hope you are safe, no emoji, no punctuation, nothing. Just that cold, sterile command. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning rattling in my barracks room. It was the lack of emotion. It was the efficiency of it. It felt less like a message from family and more like a summons. I called Harold's phone immediately. Voicemail. I called Mason's phone. Voicemail. I tried again an hour later. Voicemail. Voicemail. That is when I knew. This was not a bad signal. This was avoidance. This was a coordinated blackout. My gut. The one honed by years of walking into rooms and instantly knowing something was wrong, was screaming at me. They were hiding something, and they were trying to hide it until I was physically standing in front of them, when they could control the narrative, hit me with the emotion, the guilt, the family card. They were trying to do something fast, before I got home. That night, I could not sleep. The humidity pressed in. The cicadas outside the window kept up their incessant, drilling thrum. I stood on the small concrete balcony outside my room, overlooking a motor pool. The air smelled of salt and damp earth. I held my phone in my hand, the screen dark. I kept looking at it, at the list of my outgoing calls, all unanswered. I thought about the Harold Grant who used to exist, the man who woke up at 4 a.m. to make me pancakes on the day I shipped out to Paris Island, the man who drove 12 hours straight just to see me graduate, who grabbed me in a hug so tight I thought my ribs would crack, his face buried in my hair. "That is my girl," he had whispered, his voice thick. "That is my Marine." Where was that man? When had he been replaced by this bitter, hollowed-out stranger who saw his daughter as an obligation and his train-wrecked son as a victim to be protected at all costs? I leaned against the railing, the metal cool and damp against my forearms. Trusting family is one thing, but trusting battlefield instinct is another. My instincts had kept me alive in places a lot worse than Redwood Springs, and right now, they were telling me I was in a fight. I just did not know the enemy's position. My thumb hovered over Harold's contact again. I was about to try one more time, to send one more angry, desperate text. And then the screen lit up. It was not a call. It was not a text. It was an email notification. It was not from my meal account, but from my personal one. The subject line was not from a person. It was a system-generated alert. Potential property ownership change. Alert. I froze. My breath caught in my chest. The droning of the cicadas seemed to fade. replaced by the pounding of my own heart, loud and slow. It was from the property monitoring service I had signed up for years ago. A little paranoid security measure I bought just before my first deployment. I had almost forgotten I had it. It was an email I should have never received. My finger shook slightly as I moved it toward the screen. I touched the notification. I did not know it yet, but I had just stepped on the tripwire. The ambush they had set for me had failed, and the kill zone was about to be reversed. I was no longer the target. I was the hunter. I tapped the email. The barracks Wi-Fi was, as always, painfully slow. I watched the loading circle spin, my stomach tightening with each rotation. The cicadas outside seemed to be drilling directly into my skull. The air was hot, wet, and still. Finally, the text resolved. It was from Property Alert, a service I did not even remember signing up for. The subject line was the same. Potential property ownership change, alert. The body of the email was bland, automated, full of legal boilerplate. Dear Carly Grant, our system has detected a recent filing associated with your property. To review this filing, please click here. I clicked. It took me to a login page I did not recognize, but my password manager had it saved. I logged in, and a PDF document loaded. It was a filing from the Redwood County Recorder's Office, a notice of trustee transfer. My name was at the top, as the grantor, but next to it, where a buyer or new owner should be, it said, Harold Grant, as trustee for the Grant Family Trust. I read it 3 times. Harold Grant, as trustee. I had never heard of the Grant Family Trust. I had not created a trust. I had not made my father a trustee of anything, and I damn sure had not transferred the ownership of my house to him. My heart was not pounding anymore. It was a block of ice. The VA home loan, the mortgage, the deed. Everything was in my name, and my name alone. I had signed those papers myself, 8 years ago, feeling a sense of pride and terror I had never felt before. It was my house. The casual, bureaucratic language of the document was what made it so horrifying. It was so normal, as if people's families stole their houses every day. My discipline kicked in. This was not a family problem anymore. This was a threat. This was an attack on my assets, my security. And you meet a threat with a plan. I shut the laptop. I put on my uniform. I made sure my cover was straight. I walked out of my barracks room, into the suffocating Okinawan heat, and marched straight to the Legal Services Center, the JAG office. The office was in a low concrete building that smelled of industrial-strength air conditioning and old paper. The sergeant behind the desk looked up, bored. Can I help you, Sergeant? I need to see a legal assistance attorney. Now, it is a POA issue. The word POA was a magic key. The boredom vanished. He picked up his phone. Ma'am, I have a Sergeant Grant here. Possible POA compromise. He listened. Yes, ma'am. He hung up. Lieutenant Shaw will see you. 3rd door on the left. Lieutenant Erin Shaw was not what I expected. She looked younger than me, sharp eyes behind standard-issue glasses. Her hair pulled back in a bun so tight it looked like it hurt. She did not smile. She just pointed to the chair. Sit. You said POA compromise? Her voice was all business, a fast, clipped East Coast accent. I think so, ma'am. I got this email. I opened my laptop and turned it toward her. I did not explain. I just let her read. I watched her eyes scan the PDF. She read it once, then read it again, her brow furrowing. Finally, she leaned back in her squeaking chair and looked at me. Her expression was unreadable. Who holds your power of attorney, Sergeant Grant? It was the simplest question in the world, and it felt like a betrayal to say the words. My father, Harold Grant. Erin nodded slowly, as if I had just confirmed an obvious, depressing fact. A general POA? The one they pushed on you at the pre-deployment brief? The just in case you need someone to manage your bills one? Yes, ma'am. That is the one. Just for emergencies. This is the emergency, she said, tapping the screen. A general POA is a loaded grenade. Sergeant, And you handed it to him. But here's the good news. She leaned forward. A general POA does not let him do this. He cannot just create a trust and name himself the trustee. He cannot transfer your real estate into it, and he absolutely, 100% cannot sell, mortgage, or transfer a property bought with a VA home loan, not without a separate, specific power of attorney for real estate, which you would have had to sign, get notarized, and which the VA itself would have to have on file. She took a breath. I see this. Let's see. It is Tuesday. I see this 3 times a week. I had a corporal last month. His wife sold his new truck and emptied their joint account while he was in the field for 2 weeks. I had a staff sergeant whose own mother used a POA to take out a $20,000 loan in his name to pay off her gambling debts. Spouses, parents, siblings. They see a steady paycheck. They see an absent soldier, and they get stupid, or greedy, or both. I just sat there, the air conditioning blasting my face, but I felt hot. So, what he is doing, it is illegal? It is not just illegal in a get-your-hand-slapped way. Sergeant, Erin said, her voice dropping. He is messing with a VA loan. That is a federal matter. He did not just wander into a gray area. He has taken a running leap into federal fraud. Every single step he takes from here on out leaves a digital footprint that will lead right to a U.S. Attorney's office. My mind flashed back to the unanswered calls, the blank text message, the "has she sent the money yet" voice in the background. This was not a slip. This was not a down-on-his-luck mistake. This was a conspiracy. My father and my brother. What do I do? I asked. My voice sounded small, and I hated it. Erin's expression changed. It was not kindness. It was focus. She suddenly looked like a commander briefing a mission. Good. You are past the "how could they" phase. You are at the "what do I do" phase. That is where we fight. And here is our operation. We are not going to call him. We are not going to text him. We are not going to give them any warning that you are on to them. We are going to let them. Let them? Let them, she repeated, her eyes hard. Let them dig their own grave. We are going to build a legal cage around them, and we are going to let them walk right into it and lock the door behind them. Here is how. She pulled a legal pad over and started writing. Phase 1. Reconnaissance. We need a clear picture of the battlefield. You, Sergeant Grant, are going to draft 3 formal requests for information. 1 to the Redwood County Recorder's Office, 1 to your mortgage bank, and 1 to the VA Loan Center itself. You will request a complete, certified history of any and all transactions, inquiries, filings, or communications related to your property for the last 90 days. You will sign them. I will review them, and we will send them via certified mail. Return receipt requested. We want a paper trail for our paper trail. She scribbled on the pad. Phase 2. Containment. Your father is operating under the assumption that his old POA is valid. We are going to sever that lifeline. Today, you are going to sign a new power of attorney, a revocation of the old one, and a new, extremely limited POA. This new document will authorize Harold Grant to pick up your mail from the post office, and that is it. It will explicitly forbid any and all financial or real estate transactions of any kind. We will file this new POA with the county, the bank, and the VA immediately, the second it is filed. His old one is legally null and void. Any action he takes with it after that moment is not just fraud. It is willful, provable fraud. My head was spinning, but I was following. This was a plan. This was strategy. Phase 3, she said. The trap. While we are at it, we are creating a new legal entity, a fortress. We are drafting an irrevocable living trust. We will call it the Grant Service Trust. You are the grantor. You are the sole beneficiary. We are putting the house into this trust, effective immediately. This document, this trust, will supersede anything your father has attempted to file. It makes his Grant family trust a legal fiction. It proves his intent to defraud. We are locking the asset down, and we are setting an alarm. The new POA and this trust, filed together, will trigger an automatic alert with the VA and the bank if anyone, namely Harold Grant, tries to touch that property. She put the pen down. Trust is good, Sergeant, she said, her voice quiet. But in this line of work, monitoring is better. We are going to let them expose themselves completely. They think you are a world away. They think you are an ATM. They think you are busy. They have no idea that you are about to bring the entire weight of the Uniform Code of Military Justice and the UN federal government down on their heads. I walked out of the JAG office an hour later, my hands full of paperwork to sign, my head full of legal terms. The Okinawan heat hit me like a physical blow. But I felt cold and clear. The feeling of being a victim, of being a betrayed daughter, was gone. I was a Marine, and I was on a new mission. My role had changed. I was no longer the potential victim of a family scam. I was the one setting the trap. If they wanted to treat my house like a piggy bank, I was going to let them smash it, right in front of a prosecutor. The next 2 weeks in Okinawa were a masterclass in compartmentalization. By day, I was Sergeant Grant, running diagnostics on navigation systems, leading PT, and writing performance reviews for my junior Marines. By night, I was something else. I was an intelligence analyst, and the sole target was my own family. My laptop became my operations center. I created a new folder on a secure drive, labeled simply RWS Ops, Redwood Springs Operations. Every text message, no matter how insignificant, was screenshotted and dated. The 5-word command from Mason, the unanswered call me texts I had sent, the new, increasingly frantic, "Where are you? Call me" texts from Harold, which had started up after his initial silence. Click, save, file. I logged every unanswered phone call, time, date, duration before it went to voicemail. I even paid for a service to transcribe the voicemails he did leave. They were a pathetic mix of false concern and vague guilt. "Carly, it is your father. I just need to talk to you about something before you get home. It is important." Click, transcribe, save, file. Then, the official responses to my requests, the ones Lieutenant Shaw had helped me draft, started rolling in. They arrived as certified PDF attachments, cold and bureaucratic. The VA Loan Center was first, a polite, formal letter confirming that yes, my VA loan was in good standing. However, they noted a third-party inquiry on my behalf on October 10th, attempting to get information on a loan payoff amount. The inquiry had been denied because the third party, Harold Grant, was not properly authorized on the new, restricted POA I had filed. Bingo. The system was working. The new POA had blocked him, but not before logging his attempt. The Redwood County Recorder's Office was next. Their response was heavier. They sent scans of the documents that had triggered the initial alert. There it was, in black and white, an authorization to sell form. It had my name on it, and it had a signature. But it was not mine. It was a sloppy digital scrawl, one I had never seen. It was flagged by their system. Signature does not match file. POA on record, revoked, does not authorize sale. They had filed it after I had filed the new, restrictive POA. They were too late. They were clumsy. And they were leaving a trail of breadcrumbs a mile wide. The most damning piece of evidence came a week before my departure. A new email alert from the monitoring service. New lien filing detected. I clicked the link, a company I had never heard of. Summit Crest Funding, one of those predatory, last resort lenders, had filed a lien against the property. This was not a sale. This was a desperate move to pull cash out of the house. It was an attempt to mortgage it, to use its equity as collateral. This was the smoking gun. This was panic. Mason's mess was clearly bigger than they had anticipated, and they were trying to plug the hole with my money, fast. The filing was, once again, pending review because of the legal shields Aaron and I had put in place. They were trapped in their own fraud, running into legal walls they could not see. All this time, I had to play the part. I had to maintain the one piece of bait they were still clinging to, my ignorance. I finally responded to one of Harold's texts, not with anger, not with questions. I played the role of the busy, slightly annoyed but dutiful daughter. Me. Hey, Dad. Sorry. Been in the field. Nonstop. What's up? Everything okay? The response was almost instantaneous, a flicker of relief from him, palpable even through the text. Harold. Oh, good to hear from you. Just wanted to check in. Everything is fine. Just a lot going on. Mason is sorting out that mess he was in. Do not worry about it. I am handling it. I stared at that last line until the words blurred. I am handling it. It was a confession, written and delivered by his own hand. He was admitting to handling a mess that he had previously hidden from me, a mess that, as the documents proved, he was using my house to solve. I screenshotted it, I saved it, I filed it. That night, I sat down and formalized my plan. Lieutenant Shaw had called it building a cage, but I thought of it in military terms, a 3-phase operation. Phase 1, surveillance and reconnaissance, gather intel, document enemy movements. This phase was now complete. I had the documents, the texts, the voicemails. I had a clear picture of their methods and their objective. Phase 2, allow target penetration. This was the hardest part. I had to do nothing. I had to let them continue. I had to let them walk deeper into the trap. If I called now and screamed at them, they might stop. They might lawyer up. They might try to undo the damage, muddy the waters. No, I needed them to complete the act. I needed them to go through with the full chain of violation. I needed them to believe they had succeeded. The most effective ambush is the one the enemy never sees. Phase 3, the kill box. Upon my return to the U.S., I would not go home. I would not call them. I would take the entire beautifully organized file from RWS UPS and walk it directly into 2 offices, the Redwood County Sheriff and the VA Office of Inspector General. I would hand them the case, complete with a timeline, evidence, and a list of federal statutes they had violated. I would not be a crying daughter telling a sad story. I would be a witness delivering a prosecutorial brief. It was a lot to hold this inside, to smile at my Marines, to focus on my job, while this poison was pumping through my veins. One evening, I was cleaning my rifle in the rec room, my hands moving on autopilot, when my friend Sergeant Naomi Blake sat down across from me. She was a supply chief, tough as nails, and had a bullshit detector that could pick up a lie from a mile away. "You look like shit, Grant," she said, not unkindly, popping the top on a can of a Japanese energy drink that tasted like gasoline. "And you have looked like shit for 2 weeks. What is it? Some lieutenant screwing with your head? Back home drama?" I stopped moving. I looked at my hands, greasy with solvent. I had not told a soul. "Back home drama," I said, my voice thick. "Talk," she ordered. So I did. I told her everything. The calls, the emails, the JAG meeting, the lean. I laid it all out, in the same flat, procedural tone I had been using in my own head. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. She just stared at the wall. "Carly," she finally said, her voice dangerously quiet. "You burn them to the ground. You do not hesitate. You do not feel guilty. You burn them to the ground." She leaned in. "You know how many times I've heard this story? My boot, a lance corporal, her loving husband back in San Diego took her deployment money, bought a boat, and shacked up with her cousin. They think we are stupid. They think we are just a direct deposit. They think we are too far away to fight back. You have a chance to end them. By the book. You do it. You do it for every single one of us who has been ripped off by the very people who are supposed to be watching our 6. Do not let them think a Marine is an easy mark." Her words were like a steel rod pressed against my spine. She was right. This was not just about me. This was about the principle. The next day, Aaron helped me draft a final set of emails, this time, directly to the VA Office of Inspector General. They were simple inquiries. Establishing a timeline. To whom it may concern, I am writing to report a series of unauthorized attempts to access my VA-backed loan. This was to prevent them from ever claiming I knew and did nothing. I was establishing a clear, time-stamped record of my own compliance and alarm. I spent an hour that night reading reports I found through the JAG legal library. The number of cases where service members, deployed or TDY, had their financial lives ruined by family members with POA access. It was staggering. It was an epidemic. My anger solidified, burning away the last vestiges of doubt, of that small, sad voice in my head that whispered, "But he is your father." My new goal was not just to get my house back. The trust and the new POA had already basically guaranteed that. My goal was to send a message, and that message was, in Redwood County, if you try to steal from a soldier, you will not just be stopped, you will be prosecuted, you will be held accountable, in a courtroom, in black and white, for everyone to see. The last night in Okinawa, I packed my sea bag, I folded my uniforms, I cleaned my room, and then I went to the base printing office. I printed every email, every screenshot, every bank statement, every scanned legal filing. It was a thick stack, nearly 2 inches. I put it all in a hard plastic document folder. I slid that folder into my sea bag, right against the rigid frame, where it would not bend. It felt heavy. It felt like a weapon. Before heading to the tarmac for the long flight home, I stood on that same balcony one last time. The air was still, the Pacific a dark, endless void in front of me. I thought about my mom. She had died when I was in high school, long before Mason's real problems started, long before my dad's bitterness had set in. She was the one who signed the papers for me to enlist. I remembered what she said to me after I had a falling out with my best friend for telling a teacher the friend was cheating. Choosing what is right is easy when it costs you nothing. "Carly," she had said, her hand on my cheek, "it is the one time in your life you will have to choose what is right, even when it costs you people you love. That is the choice that will define you." I was about to make that choice. I turned and walked away. I sat on the packed C-130, the roar of the engines vibrating through the metal bench. My sea bag was at my feet. I rested my hand on it, feeling the hard edge of the document folder through the canvas. I was ready. The campaign in Okinawa was over. The operation on the home front was just beginning. I did not fly home. The military moves on its own time, and its time was too slow. I cashed in every favor I had, got myself manifested on a transport to Seattle, and the moment my boots hit the tarmac at SeaTac, I was a civilian on a mission. I did not call my father. I did not call Mason. I walked past the USO, past the welcoming committees, and went straight to the rental car counter. The drive south to Redwood Springs was a 3-hour blur of green pine and gray. Spitting rain. My phone was off. My focus was absolute. Phase 2 was over. Phase 3 had begun. I did not drive to my house. I did not drive to Harold's. I drove straight to the Redwood County Courthouse, a squat, 70s-era brick building that smelled of damp carpets and stale coffee. I found the sign for the Recorder of Deeds office. The woman behind the counter had a high, poofy cloud of gray hair and glasses on a chain. Her name tag said Linda. She was in the middle of a phone call, sounding deeply bored. "No, sir. A quitclaim deed is not the same. No, sir. You will have to come in." She hung up with a heavy sigh and looked at me. "Help you?" I was still in my uniform. I had not slept in 36 hours, and I knew I looked it, tired, grim, and official. "My name is Sergeant Carly Grant," I said, my voice flat from exhaustion. "I am here on active duty. I believe there has been fraudulent activity related to my property at 1225 Cedar Street. I need to see the complete, hard copy file." Linda Pruitt's entire demeanor shifted. The boredom evaporated, replaced by a sharp, focused concern. She saw the uniform, the fatigue, and the absolute lack of drama in my voice. This was not a hysterical homeowner. This was a soldier. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice dropping. "Okay, let's sit you down. Let me pull that, Grant, you said?" 1225 Cedar? She disappeared into a back room filled with rolling metal shelves. I could hear her muttering. A minute later, she returned, holding a file that was alarmingly thick. It was at least 2 inches. She set it on the counter between us with a heavy thud. "You were not kidding," she said. "This thing's been busy." She opened the cover, and there it was. The past 3 weeks of my life, in triplicate. I saw the notice of trustee transfer that had triggered the first alert. I saw the Grant Family Trust document, a flimsy, obvious template Harold must have downloaded from the internet. And then I saw the next layer. "Oh my," Linda whispered. It was a sales contract, signed 2 days ago, the property at 1225 Cedar Street, sold by Harold Grant, as trustee, to a woman named Hannah Cole. Hannah Cole, a real person, a name I did not know, a woman who, at this very moment, probably thought she had just bought her dream home. "They did not," I said. It was not a question. "They did," Linda said, her finger tracing the line. "And, oh, look at this. They got an advance on the sale." She flipped the page. There it was. The lien from Summit Crest Funding. It was not a full mortgage. It was a short-term, high-interest bridge loan, taken out against the pending sale. The interest rate was a staggering 35%. This was loan shark money, just put on paper. This was Mason's debt, clear as day. "And who," I asked, my voice dangerously quiet, "was the broker?" Linda scanned the sales document. "Real estate agent. Kurt Maddox, Maddox Realty." She looked up at me over her glasses. "That name rings a bell. He's not exactly, well, let's just say he flips houses very, very fast. We have had a few of his files come through here that raised eyebrows, but nothing ever stuck." "Look at this," I said, pointing to the screen of a digital signature pad that had been scanned. It was on the authorization to sell form, the one I had seen online. "That's my signature, or it is supposed to be." Linda leaned in, her eyes narrowing. "That is what they submitted. But look here." She turned her own monitor toward me. She typed in my property number. The official digital record flashed on the screen, and next to that authorization form, there was a bright red, flashing note. "Transaction flagged," it read. "Signature mismatch on file. POA on record revoked OC 18. Attempted filing OC 20. Do not proceed." My new, restrictive POA, the one Aaron Shaw and I had filed from Okinawa. It had worked. It had been the firewall. They had submitted their fraudulent documents after my legal shield was already in place. "He tried to use the old POA," Linda breathed, her eyes wide. "Even after you filed the new one, and then, when that was rejected, he just forged your name." She sat back, pushing her glasses up onto her hair. She looked at the thick, messy file. She looked at me, in my uniform. "Honey," she said, with the weight of 30 years of public service in her voice, "this is not just a messy family dispute. This whole file. This is a step-by-step guide on how to get yourself indicted. This is one of the sloppiest, most arrogant cases of real estate fraud I have ever seen." She slid a form across the counter. "This is the official fraud complaint form. You fill this out, and I will personally walk it, and a certified copy of this entire file, over to the sheriff's office before I go to lunch. They are right next door." "Thank you, Linda," I said. I meant it. "You go get 'em, Sergeant," she said, her voice hard. "You go get 'em." I filled out the complaint. My hand did not shake. My next stop was the bank, the Redwood Springs First National. It was the same bank I had used since I opened my first savings account, the one my mother had taken me to. The sterile, quiet interior felt like a violation. I was directed to the branch manager, a man named Mr. Davies. I showed him my military ID and the notarized, hard copy of my new, restrictive power of attorney. "I need a full transaction history on all accounts associated with my father, Harold Grant, and my brother, Mason Grant, in relation to my property at 1225 Cedar Street," I said. "I am in the process of filing a federal fraud complaint." Davies, to his credit, turned white and did not argue. The words federal fraud and the presence of a uniformed service member tend to accelerate customer service. He clicked away on his keyboard. What he showed me was not a guess. It was a receipt. Sergeant Grant, there was an escrow advance wired into your father's primary checking account 3 days ago, he said, reading from the screen. An amount of $40,000. The advance from the sale, the money from Hannah Cole. And the activity since then? I asked. He winced. Large withdrawals, cash, $10,000 on the same day, another $10,000 the next morning, and a final $10,000 just 2 hours ago. Then, this, a wire transfer from your father's account to your brother's account for the remaining $10,000. As of 1 hour ago, your father's account is nearly empty. They had drained it. In less than 72 hours, they had the money. Mason had his blood money. Do you want me to freeze these accounts? Davies asked, his hand hovering over the keyboard. I can lock them right now. I thought for a second. Phase 3, the kill box. The complaint was filed. The evidence was logged. But the crime, the full exchange, it needed to be complete. I needed them to feel they had won. I needed them to be holding the cash, fat and happy, when the door got kicked in. No, I said. Davies looked shocked. No, but they have the money. Yes, I said. Let them have it. Let the transaction complete. I need the entire chain of events to be unbroken. Just log this conversation. Note that I was here. Note that I am aware. That is all. I left the bank, my head buzzing. The feeling was not rage. It was grim satisfaction. It was the feeling of knowing, without a doubt, that your enemy has made a fatal, irreversible error. They had gone too deep to turn back. They had the money. They had completed the crime. And now, every step they took next, every dollar they spent, was just another piece of evidence. I got back in the rental car. There was only one place left to go. I drove the familiar streets, the ones I had memorized as a kid, past the high school, past the diner. I turned onto Cedar Street. And there it was, my house. My stomach clenched. It looked different, wrong. Harold's old, beat-up Ford truck was parked in the driveway. Mason's rusty green sedan was parked behind it, and in front, on the curb, was a small U-Haul trailer. A stack of new brown cardboard boxes sat on the lawn, the kitchen and bedroom labels stark in the gray afternoon light. They were there. They were all there. Harold, Mason, and Hannah Cole, the new buyer, the innocent victim, was in the process of moving in. This was it, the moment. The performance on the porch was about to begin. The one they had rehearsed, where they would break the news to me. The one where they would tell me I was homeless. I parked the rental car half a block down, where they could not see it from the porch. I sat there for a full minute, just watching the front door of my own home, a home that was now, officially, a crime scene. I knew exactly what I was going to say. I knew I would not tell them everything. I would not tell them about Linda, or the bank, or the file I had just dropped off at the sheriff's office. I would let them have their moment. I would let them deliver their lines. And then I would deliver mine. The one that began, "The house you just sold. The thing is..." I turned off the engine, the sudden silence deafening. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, adjusting the cover on my head so it was perfectly straight. I gripped the strap of my sea bag, the heavy document folder inside pressing against my back. I opened the car door and stepped out onto the pavement, like I was stepping onto the scene of a crime that I had just allowed the perpetrators to arrange themselves. The sea bag strap cut into my shoulder as I walked the half block. The air was cold, and I could smell the damp wood of my own porch. Each step was deliberate. I could hear their voices before I reached the lawn. Mason was laughing about something. I stepped onto the walkway. The scraping sound of my boots on the concrete made them look up. Mason's laugh died. Harold's face, which had been relaxed, tightened into that mask of rehearsed grievance. They stood up from the porch chairs, moving to the top step, unconsciously creating a barricade. They had been waiting for this. This was their show. I stopped at the bottom step, placing my sea bag on the ground next to me with a soft, heavy thud. I looked at them. I did not say hello. Harold took his cue. He crossed his arms, assuming the position of the long-suffering father about to do a hard but necessary thing. "You're homeless now," he said. The words were flat, practiced. "We sold the house." Mason, beer can in hand, stepped up beside him, a perfect little wingman. "Marines do not stay put anyway. Carly," he jeered, the old familiar contempt in his voice. "What do you need a house for? We needed it." I looked at him, at his smug, weak face. I looked at my father, at his cowardly, self-justifying posture. The silent explosion I'd felt in my gut in Okinawa was now a core of absolute ice. I felt nothing, just clarity. I did not yell. I did not cry. I simply unzipped the small side pocket of my utility jacket and took out a thin notebook and a pen. This was not what they expected. My calm was a disruption. "When did you sell it?" I asked. My voice was quiet, conversational. Harold blinked. He was prepared for tears, not questions. "What? What does it matter? It is done." "When?" I repeated, clicking the pen. "A few days ago," he said, shifting his weight. "It is all legal. It is handled." "Who did the paperwork?" I asked, my eyes on him. A real estate guy. Kurt Maddox," Mason piped up, eager to be involved. He knew how to get it done fast. "Kurt Maddox," I repeated, not writing it down. I did not need to. I already knew. "And how much did you owe, Mason?" Mason's face soured. "That is none of your business." "How much?" I pressed, my voice still quiet. "And to whom?" "It was a lot," Harold suddenly boomed, stepping forward, his face turning red. He was back on script. "This is not about money, Carly. This is about family. Family sacrifices for family. Your brother's life was in danger." "Legit danger," Mason echoed, nodding vigorously. These guys from Portland, they were serious. They were going to do things. "They were loan sharks," Harold shouted, his voice cracking with theatrical fear. He was painting a picture, for me, for himself, for the neighbors. The picture of a desperate father saving his victimized son. They were threatening to break his legs. They were threatening me. I had no choice. "So you took my house," I stated. It was not an accusation. It was a clarification. "So I saved my son," Harold shot back. Mason, feeling the righteousness of his victimhood, stepped forward. "What is the big deal? Carly? It is just a house. It is just wood and nails. You were never here anyway. I was the one here. I was the one in trouble. You have your Marine Corps money. You are fine. We use the equity to pay off the debt. It is a simple transaction." He made a "what can you do" gesture with his free hand. The sheer, breathtaking entitlement of it, the casual dismissal of my entire life's work. It was almost impressive. He genuinely believed he had a right to it. It was at that exact moment, as if summoned by the sheer stupidity of the word transaction, that the front door opened. A woman, maybe a few years older than me, stood in the doorway. She was wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt, and she was holding a white mug that said, "Life begins after coffee." She looked tired, stressed, and completely confused. This was Hannah Cole. Her eyes went from me, in my uniform, to Harold and Mason on the porch, and then back to me. "Harold?" she asked, her voice tentative. "Is everything okay? Your neighbors are starting to look—" Harold's face flushed. He was losing control of the scene. "It is fine, Hannah. This is my daughter, Carly. She just got back. We were just filling her in." Hannah looked at me, her expression softening with something like sympathy. "Oh, you are Carly, the Marine. It is so good to meet you. She faltered, sensing the ice-cold tension. "I guess you are just here to—" pick up the last of your things?" "Ms. Cole," I said, my voice polite, professional. I ignored Harold and Mason. I spoke only to her. She looked surprised that I knew her name. "I am Sergeant Carly Grant. I just arrived from my post in Okinawa. I was not aware my house was for sale." The politeness of the words, combined with their meaning, hit her like a physical slap. Her smile froze and slid off her face. "What?" she whispered. I repeated, taking one step up onto the bottom of the walkway. "I was not aware my house was for sale." "But," Hannah looked back at Harold, her eyes wide with panic. "But Harold, Mr. Grant, you said she agreed. You said she was overseas and wanted to free up capital. That is what the agent said. You said she was happy to sell fast." "He did," Harold blustered, trying to regain control. "Kurt Maddox, he handled it all. He said it was fine. Carly, he said the POA covered it." I kept my eyes on Hannah. Her face was turning pale. "Ms. Cole," I asked, my voice still calm, "when you signed the papers with Kurt Maddox, did you have your own lawyer present?" Hannah's hand, the one holding the mug, began to shake. "What? No. Kurt, Mr. Maddox. He said it was not necessary. He said it was a simple family transfer to get the money fast. He said the family just really needed the cash." "He was right about that," I said. "They did need the cash." I unzipped the main compartment of my jacket, the one I had put the document in. I pulled out the folded, stapled copy of the Grant Service Trust. I unfolded it. "Harold, Mason," I said their names, forcing them to look at me. "You two have never been very good with details." I turned back to Hannah Cole and held the document out, not for her to take, but for her to see. "Ms. Cole, my name is Carly Grant. I am the sole owner of this property, which is financed through a U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs loan, 3 weeks ago, from my base in Okinawa. I filed this document with the Redwood County Recorder's Office. It is called the Grant Service Trust. This house, and all its assets, were placed into this trust." Harold's face was a mask of confusion. "A trust? What? I have the trust. The Grant Family Trust." "That," I said, pointing at him, "was a fraudulent document you downloaded from the internet. This," I tapped the paper, "is a legally binding, irrevocable trust filed by a JAG attorney and cross-filed with the VA. It states, on page 2, paragraph 3, that this property cannot be sold, mortgaged, or used as collateral for any loan, ever, without my direct wet ink signature, witnessed by a VA representative, your sale." I looked from Harold to Mason. "Is not just void, it is a federal crime." The word federal hung in the cold, damp air. Mason's smugness was gone. He looked green. Hannah Cole made a small, choking sound. She dropped the coffee mug. It shattered on the porch. Brown liquid and white ceramic shards spraying everywhere. "No," she gasped, looking at the broken pieces, then at Harold. "No, we sold our condo. We used all of our savings for the down payment." She looked at Harold and Mason, but she was not seeing a family anymore. She was seeing the 2 men who had just stolen her life savings. They took $40,000, she whispered, her voice breaking. "And they spent it," I said, my voice hard. "Cash withdrawals. Ms. Cole, $10,000 at a time. The last of it was wired to Mason's account about an hour ago." Hannah's face crumpled. She was not just a victim. She was my victim, in a way, the collateral damage of their greed. I turned my full attention to her. "Ms. Cole, Hannah, I am telling you this, right now, as a courtesy. The complaint has already been filed. The Sheriff's Office and the VA Inspector General have the full file. What happens next is not up to me." I pointed at Harold and Mason, who were frozen, statues of guilt on a stage of their own making. These 2 men, and their agent Kurt Maddox, have committed wire fraud, real estate fraud, and fraud against the VA. They are going to be prosecuted, but the system, Ms. Cole, is slow, and right now, your name is on a fraudulent contract. Your money is in their pockets." She was sobbing now, her hands over her mouth. "So this is my advice to you, and it is the only time I'm going to give it. You are going to go inside, you are going to call your husband, and then you are going to call the best damn fraud attorney you can find. Because if you do not call a lawyer today, right now, you will not just be a victim in this, you will be an accomplice. The price for this is going to be paid. My advice to you is to make sure you are not the one who pays it." That did it. The word accomplice cut through her panic. Her head snapped up. Her eyes, red and furious, locked on Harold. "You," she spat at him. You used us." Harold finally found his voice, but it was not a voice of reason. It was the last, desperate roar of a cornered animal. He did not yell at Hannah. He yelled at me. "You!" he screamed, his finger pointing, shaking. "You are doing this. You are tearing this family apart. Over a house. Over money. He is your brother. I am your father. You are destroying this family." The air was still. The neighbors were definitely watching now. I looked at him, at this man who was my father, and I felt nothing but a cold, deep pity. "The family destroyed itself. Harold," I said, my voice clear, cutting through his rage. "The family destroyed itself the moment you two looked at my house, the one thing I built for myself, and saw it as an ATM. The family destroyed itself when you forged my name. The family destroyed itself when you used your victim's son as a shield for your own greed. I am not destroying anything." I paused, then took a step back, retrieving my sea bag. "I am just turning on the lights." Hannah Cole did not say another word. She gave Harold one last look of pure, unadulterated hatred, then turned, stepped back inside the house over the broken mug, and slammed the door. A second later, through the closed door, we heard her scream, "Mike, call the lawyer! Call the lawyer now!" I turned to leave. Harold was still standing there, his arm extended, his mouth open, but all the rage was gone. He looked empty. He was finally, truly, seeing the shape and size of the legal machine he had just pushed his entire family into. He was not afraid of me. He was afraid of the United States government, of the VA, of the sheriff, of the consequences. He was terrified. And as I walked away, I knew that fear was the only thing he would be feeling for a very, very long time. I did not go to my father's house. I did not go to a hotel. I drove to the strip of cheap motels on the edge of town, where Highway 99 becomes a blur of flickering signs and long-haul trucks. I found one called the Redwood Inn. Its sign had a burnt-out D, so it just read, Rewoo Inn. A sickly pink neon vacancy sign cast a buzz and a glow over the wet parking lot. I paid cash for one night. The room smelled of stale cigarettes, industrial carpet cleaner, and dampness. The air conditioner under the window roared to life with the sound of a dying animal, shuddering and spitting out cold, metallic air. I dropped my sea bag on the floor, locked the deadbolt, and slid the chain into place. I sat on the edge of the stiff polyester bedspread, and I finally turned on my phone. It was like setting off a bomb. It vibrated so hard on the nightstand that it skittered across the fake wood grain, a cascade of notifications, one after another, a waterfall of desperation. 22 missed calls, 14 from Harold, 8 from Mason, 37 text messages. I did not read them, not at first. I just watched them pile up. As I watched, the screen lit up again. Harold Grant, incoming call. I silenced it. I watched the call go to voicemail. A second later, it lit up again. Mason Grant, incoming call. I silenced that too. They were a perfect chronological record of their panic. From Harold, 10 minutes after I left. Carly, come back. We need to talk about this. You do not understand. You misunderstood. That lawyer is wrong. Kurt said it was all legal. Hannah is calling the police. Are you happy now? You're ruining everything. From Mason. WTF, Carly, you can't do this. Dad's freaking out. You went too far. This is family. We're gonna get us all arrested over a stupid house? Then, as the hours passed, the tone shifted from panic to pleading and blame. From Harold. Please, honey, just call me. I did not know. I did not understand the law. I was just trying to help your brother. And then, the one that made my stomach turn. You are doing this to your own family. Your mother would be so ashamed of you right now. People are going to laugh at us. You are making the Grant family a joke. I closed the texts. My hand was steady. That last message, the one invoking my mother, had cauterized any lingering flicker of doubt. I opened my laptop. I plugged my phone into it. I found a simple audio recording app. Then, I opened my voicemail. I had 7 new messages. I hit play on the first one. Harold. His voice was a wreck, cracking and thin. Carly, it's Dad. Please, just call me. This is all. This is a terrible misunderstanding. That woman, Hannah, her husband he's talking about suing us, suing me. I thought that trust thing, the VA paper, I thought it was just paperwork. Carly, just for show. I did not think it was real. I clicked the record button on my app, then played the voicemail again, holding the phone speaker up to the laptop's microphone. I saved the file. hgrant vm01.mp3. A clean, clear, beautiful admission of guilt. He knew about the trust. He had received it, and he had ignored it. That was not ignorance. That was intent. It was the golden bullet for a prosecutor. I did the same for the next one. Mason. He was not pleading. He was angry. You know what, Carly? Fine. You win. You were always the favorite anyway, weren't you? Always the perfect Marine. Well, you just screwed your whole family. I hope you're happy. I hope you and your house are very happy together. Dad's a mess. This is your fault. Click, record, play, save, Grant VM01 MP3. An admission of his involvement and a clear attempt to blame the victim. I went through all of them. Each one was a new layer of evidence. They were so blinded by their panic and their self-pity that they could not see they were just confessing, over and over, into a digital recorder. When I was done, I opened a new document. I connected to the motel's unsecured, agonizingly slow Wi-Fi. I opened my email and attached the RWS OPS folder, the one with every scan from Okinawa, to a new draft. I addressed the first email to the address on the card Linda Pruitt had given me that afternoon. Sheriff Leo Delgado, Redwood County Sheriff's Office. I addressed the second to the email address Lieutenant Aaron Shaw had given me. VA Office of Inspector General, Pacific Division. The subject line was the same for both. Formal witness statement and evidence file. VA loan fraud. 1225 Cedar Street. I began to write. I did not write like a daughter. I did not write like a victim. I wrote like a Marine filing an after-action report. I was objective. I was chronological. I was cold. On October 18th, from my duty station at Camp Nolan, Okinawa, I was made aware of a fraudulent attempt to transfer ownership of my property. I detailed the old POA, the new restrictive POA, the creation of the Grant Service Trust. I attached the time-stamped filing receipts for both. I detailed the fraudulent authorization to sell form, the forged signature, and the Grant Family Trust fiction. I detailed the illegal lien from Summit Crest funding. I detailed the text messages, the unanswered calls, and the recorded voicemails, attaching each audio file, each one clearly labeled. I detailed the bank transactions, the $40,000 advance, the cash withdrawals, the wire transfer to Mason. I attached the statement I had pulled from the bank. I described the confrontation on the porch, quoting their admissions directly. Harold Grant stated he had to use the house to save your brother. Mason Grant confirmed he used the money to take care of some people. I wrote for 2 straight hours. The only sounds were the clicking of my keyboard and the roar of the ancient air conditioner. Then I got to the final section. The form I was filling out had a line. Accused parties. I typed the letters. Harold Grant. I paused. I looked at the name on the screen. It felt heavy. This was the man who taught me to ride a bike. This was the man who told me I could be anything I wanted to be. I felt a sudden, sharp sting behind my eyes. I could feel the heat of the fire I was pushing him into. My mother's voice, clear as a bell in my memory. We were in the kitchen, years ago. Mason had just been caught stealing from his part-time job at the hardware store, and Harold had covered for him, paid the money back, and yelled at the manager for picking on his boy. My mother had been furious. I remembered her turning to me later that night, her face tired. Your father? He loves your brother, Carly, but he loves him wrong. He thinks protecting him from the consequences is love. It is not. It is weakness, and it is making Mason weak. One day, if your father chooses to protect your brother instead of protecting the truth, you have to choose the truth, even if it is the hardest thing in the world. You promise me. I had promised. I looked back at the screen. I put my fingers back on the keys. Harold Grant, father. I hit the tab key. Mason Grant, brother. I typed in the last name. Kurt Maddox, real estate agent. I stared at the list. This was not revenge. I had to be clear about that in my own head. If this was revenge, I would have gone nuclear on the porch. I would have screamed. I would have cried. I would have made it a messy, emotional spectacle. This was not emotion. This was accountability. This was systemic. This was a direct, logical, and unavoidable consequence of their actions. This was me, choosing the truth, just like I had promised. I was not doing this to them. I was simply handing their actions over to the system designed to judge them. I took a deep breath. I hit send. I sent the first email. I sent the second email. I watched the progress bar crawl across the screen, uploading the massive folder of evidence. And then I shut the laptop. I sat in the buzzing silence of the motel room. The red neon light from the Rewu Inn sign outside pulsed against the thin curtains, filling the room with a faint, sickly red glow. My phone, which had been quiet, buzzed on the nightstand. It was not a call. It was an email notification. I opened it. It was a reply. From the sheriff's office. It had been less than 10 minutes. Sergeant Grant. My name is Sheriff Leo Delgado. I have received your email and the accompanying files. This is extensive. I am pulling the file from the recorder's office that Ms. Pruitt logged this afternoon. I would like you to come to my office tomorrow morning at 0800 hours. Please bring all original hard copies of these documents in your possession. Do not contact the accused parties. Do not return to the property. Consider this an active investigation. See you in the morning. Sheriff L. Delgado, 0800. He used military time. I felt a small, strange flicker of relief. He was not brushing this off. He was not treating me like a hysterical woman in a family fight. He saw the evidence, and he was taking it seriously. I looked at the clock. It was almost midnight. I had 8 hours. I opened my sea bag and pulled out the hard plastic document folder. I went down to the motel lobby, which was just a small, fluorescent-lit room behind bulletproof glass. You have a business center? I asked the night clerk, who was watching a tiny, grainy TV. He grunted and pointed to a single, ancient desktop computer and a wheezing laser printer in the corner. Costs 10 cents a page. Fine, I said. I spent the next hour printing duplicates of everything. The new POA, the Grant Service Trust, the bank statements, the text logs. I made a clean, organized, physical copy, exactly mirroring the digital file I had just sent. It felt good. It felt like preparing a mission brief. It was not a family story. It was a case. Back in my room, I set my phone alarm for 0600. I took off my boots, but I did not get under the covers. I just lay on top of the stiff polyester spread in my uniform, my hands folded on my chest. I was exhausted. but my mind was still running. Before I shut my eyes, I played Harold's first voicemail one more time, without the recorder. I thought that trust thing, the VA paper, I thought it was just paperwork. Carly, just for show. I did not think it was real. That was the epitaph for our relationship. He thought my shields, my legal rights, my career, my life, were all just for show, something that could be brushed aside for his real problems. I closed my eyes, the air conditioner rattling in my ears. I was not a victim anymore. I was not a scared daughter or a homeless soldier. I was a witness, and I was waiting for 0800. I was waiting to step into a different kind of battlefield. Tomorrow, this would not be a family matter anymore. It would be a case number, something anyone could look up at 0750. I was standing in the lobby of the Redwood County Sheriff's Office. The adrenaline from the night before had long since faded, leaving behind a cold, gritty exhaustion. The hard copy folder was in my hand. A deputy with a thick neck and a name tag that read Marks looked up from his computer, squinted, and then his eyes widened in recognition.
Sergeant Grant? Carly Grant, right?
I nodded. I remember you, he said, surprisingly gentle. You came in, maybe 3 years back, to register your address as a new resident, just after you bought your place. Welcome home, Sergeant, though I wish it were under better circumstances. He stood. The sheriff is waiting for you. This way. He led me down a beige hallway that smelled of industrial-strength bleach and old files. He knocked once on a door marked Sheriff Leo Delgado and opened it. Sheriff Delgado was a man in his late 50s, with short gray hair, a face lined with exhaustion, and the sharpest, most intelligent eyes I had ever seen. His desk was neat, almost sparse, but sitting in the exact center of it was the thick 2-inch file Linda Pruitt had given him. My email was open on his monitor. Sergeant Grant, he said, his voice a low rumble. He did not stand, but he gestured to the empty chair opposite him. Sit. I sat. Deputy Marks quietly closed the door behind me. Delgado leaned back, his chair letting out a long, slow creak. He steepled his fingers, looking first at the file, then at me. I read your email, then I read it again. Then I read the entire file from the recorder's office, which Linda, God bless her, had already flagged. I cross-referenced the names. He leaned forward, his eyes locking on mine. Sergeant, if even half of what you have documented here is accurate, we are not talking about a simple property dispute. This is not a family squabble that gets handled in civil court. We are talking about multiple, interwoven felonies, and given the VA loan component, we are talking federal charges. It is all accurate, Sheriff, I said. My voice was steady. I opened the folder I had brought and slid the pristine, duplicated set of documents across his desk. These are the hard copies you requested. POA revocation receipts, the grant service trust, the bank statements, the text logs, and the audio files of the voicemails I received last night. He raised an eyebrow at the organized stack, then nodded, a flicker of appreciation. Good. Walk me through it, start to finish. I did. I gave it to him like an after-action report. No tears, no anger, just facts. The old POA, the suspicious calls from Okinawa, the alert, the immediate engagement with JAG, the filing of the new, restrictive POA and the Grant Service Trust, the subsequent, failed attempts by my father and Kurt Maddox to use the old POA, the forged signature, the fraudulent lien, the $40,000 payout from the illegal sale, the immediate draining of the account by Harold and Mason. When I finished, the silence in the room was heavy. Delgado rubbed his hand over his face. Kurt Maddox, he said, his voice laced with acid. That name has been on the edge of my desk for 5 years. He's a snake, specializes in gray flips, boundary disputes, finding loopholes. He's always been suspected of targeting the elderly, the distressed, but he's slippery. We have never, ever had anything this clean on him. This is not gray. This is a black and white, signed confession of fraud. He looked at me, his gaze intense. That JAG officer of yours, Lieutenant Shaw, she gave you the best advice of your life. The second they put their hands on that VA loan, they crossed a line they cannot uncross. He picked up his desk phone. Marks, I need a secure video line to the VA Office of Inspector General, Pacific Division. The contact is a special agent, Melissa Rhodes. Get her on, now. Less than 2 minutes later, a large monitor on the wall flickered to life. A woman with dark, pulled-back hair, a sharp blazer, and an expression that tolerated no nonsense appeared. Leo, she said, her voice crisp, you do not call this early unless it is bad. What is it? Melissa, I am sitting here with Sergeant Carly Grant, U.S. Marine Corps, Delgado said, getting straight to the point. She just got back from Okinawa. While she was deployed, her father, her brother, and a local realtor named Kurt Maddox conspired to fraudulently sell her home, which is financed with a VA loan. We have forged signatures, use of a revoked POA, and a full money trail. Agent Melissa Rhodes's expression did not change, but her eyes hardened into points of ice. She looked past Delgado, at me. Sergeant, my name is Agent Rhodes. I am profoundly sorry we have to meet under these circumstances. She looked back at the sheriff. Leo, this is not a potential case. This is a textbook example of Title 38 fraud. They did not just defraud a Marine, they defrauded the United States government. This is our jurisdiction, and we will be taking a lead role. There is more, I said, my voice cutting in. Both of them looked at me. The new POA and the Grant Service Trust, I said. I did not just file them to block the sale. Lieutenant Shaw and I, we knew they were clumsy. We set it up as a trap. Delgado leaned forward, his eyes narrowed. What do you mean? I mean, the system was not just a shield. Sheriff, it was a logging device. We knew they would get rejected using the old POA, and we knew that rejection would be logged. We knew they would try to forge my signature, and we knew the system would flag the mismatch. We filed the trust specifically so that any attempt to file a lien, like the one from Summit Crest Funding, would be immediately flagged and documented. They thought they were being sneaky, trying to find a way in. I looked from Delgado to the monitor. In reality, they were just creating a perfect, time-stamped, unassailable chain of evidence. Every single move they made after I filed those documents was not just a mistake. It was a willful, documented act of criminal intent. They did not just fail to get the house. They succeeded in documenting their own conspiracy. A slow, grim smile touched the corner of Sheriff Delgado's mouth. On the screen, Agent Rhodes just nodded once, looking deeply impressed.
Sergeant Grant, Delgado said, almost laughing. You did not just bring me a problem. You brought me the solution, gift-wrapped.
He became all business. Okay, here's what happens now. First, my office is filing a lis pendens against the property at 1225 Cedar Street. That freezes the title. Effective immediately. That house is now part of an active criminal investigation. The sale to Hannah Cole is dead in the water. Just as he said it, his desk phone buzzed. He glanced at the caller ID. Well, speak of the devil. This is Hannah Cole's lawyer. He hit the speakerphone button. And my clients are innocent victims in this. Sheriff? A fast, tinny voice yelled from the speaker. They were defrauded just as much as your Sergeant Grant. They are prepared to cooperate fully. In fact, I am sending you a file right now of the complete email correspondence between my client and Kurt Maddox. He repeatedly assured her the transaction was valid. Wait, I have it here. He told her, and I'm quoting, "Do not worry about the daughter. Her dad has full authority and can sign for everything. She is a soldier, deployed. She will not be back anytime soon. This is just a quick cash deal." Delgado looked at me. Thank you, counselor. That email is now evidence. I am summoning all parties, your clients, Mr. Maddox, Harold Grant, and Mason Grant, for a formal confrontation in my office tomorrow at 1000 hours. He disconnected the call. Melissa, he said to the monitor. I will be there, Agent Rhodes replied, her voice flat steel.
The VA will support this prosecution 100%. This is precisely the kind of exploitation of deployed service members that my office exists to stop. Sergeant Grant, she looked at me. You are not in this alone. The system is with you. The screen went black. I just sat there, the tension of the last 3 weeks finally starting to break. It was a strange, painful relief. My father, my brother, the pain was real, but the relief of not being alone, of the system actually working, it was overwhelming. I need you to write a full, sworn statement, Delgado said, his voice softer. Everything you told me, Marks will set you up in a quiet room. I spent the next 3 hours writing. Marks brought me what he called the good coffee and a sandwich. It was quiet, procedural. Around 3 in the afternoon, Delgado found me. He's here, he said quietly. Maddox, he waltzed in for his friendly chat. You should stay back here, but you might want to see this. He led me to the hallway outside his office, to a dark observation room with a one-way mirror. We looked into a small, windowless interview room. Kurt Maddox was sitting at the table. He was all flashy suit, gold watch, and a confident, shark-like smile. He looked annoyed to be there, but not scared. He was leaning back, checking his phone. Delgado and Marks entered. Maddox did not stand. Leo, what is this all about? Maddox said, his voice smooth. My afternoon is busy. If this is about the Grant house, it was a simple family deal. The dad had the POA. It was all legit, a little messy, but clean. Is that so? Delgado said. He slid the thick, 2-inch file onto the metal table. The thud was loud in the small room. Because this file, and Agent Melissa Rhodes from the VA Office of Inspector General, seemed to disagree. Delgado nodded to the monitor on the wall. It flickered to life, showing Agent Rhodes's unamused face. I watched Kurt Maddox. I watched his eyes go from the file to Delgado, and then to the monitor. I watched the blood drain from his tan face. The smile did not just fade. It collapsed. The cheap, false confidence evaporated, replaced by the raw, sudden panic of an animal that just realized the trap has sprung. He finally understood. This was not a local, gray area problem. He had messed with the federal government. I turned away from the glass. I had seen enough. I stood in the hallway, and I could hear, faintly, Maddox's voice, no longer smooth, rising in pitch as he started to backpedal. They thought they were so clever. My father, my brother, and this predator, they thought they were just selling a house. They thought they were just skirting the law, bending the rules. But I was standing in the hallway, watching them realize they had just built their own cage. Delgado came out a minute later, leaving Marks in the room with the suddenly frantic Maddox and the cold, unblinking image of Agent Rhodes. He's asking for a lawyer, Delgado said, a grim satisfaction in his voice. First smart move he has made. Go get some rest. Sergeant, you've done more than enough today. He walked me to the lobby. Be here tomorrow, 10:00. You should be present for the confrontation. He paused at the door, looking back down the hall toward the interview room. That house, it is a crime scene now. And you, Sergeant Grant, are the most important witness we have. The conference room at the county building was large, sterile, and smelled of faint, old coffee and floor wax. The walls were a depressing beige. A long, polished table filled the center. It felt less like a meeting and more like a tribunal. I was seated on one side of the table, by myself. My hard copy file was closed in front of me. Across from me sat Harold, Mason, and their 2 new best friends, a slick, oversuited lawyer for Kurt Maddox, and a pale, clearly overworked public defender for Mason. Harold had not been able to afford a lawyer, so he was representing himself, which was, in itself, a perfect summary of his life choices. At the head of the table sat Sheriff Delgado, his expression impassive, flanked by Deputy Marks. To their right sat a tight-lipped man in a suit, Hannah Cole's lawyer. Hannah and her husband were not present. Their lawyer was there to represent their interests as the primary victims of the financial fraud. On the large monitor at the end of the room, Agent Melissa Rhodes's face was already present, her expression a mask of federal authority. I did not avoid their eyes. I looked at Mason, who was staring at the table, picking at a hangnail, his face sullen and terrified. I looked at Kurt Maddox, who was whispering angrily to his lawyer, his shark smile long gone. And then I looked at my father. He looked old. He had not slept. His eyes were red-rimmed and bloodshot, and when they met mine, they were filled with a toxic, confusing slurry of terror, resentment, and a desperate, pathetic plea. I looked away, not out of weakness, but out of finality. "This is not a trial," Sheriff Delgado began, his voice filling the room, cutting off all the whispering. "This is a confrontation, a formal meeting to lay out the facts as we have them. This is an active criminal investigation, and a federal one at that. Everything you say here is on the record." He nodded to a recorder in the center of the table. "Mr. Harold Grant," Delgado said, his eyes on my father. "You were the primary filer on these fraudulent documents. You will speak first. Tell me what happened." Harold cleared his throat. His voice was a dry rasp. "It was a misunderstanding. I did not understand the trust thing. I thought I've always had Carly's power of attorney, the old one. I thought it was fine. I thought it let me manage things. I was just trying to save my son, Mason. He was in terrible trouble." He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "I was just trying to save my boy. Carly. That is all. I thought we could sell the house, pay the debt, and figure it out. I did not. I did not know the law." Delgado did not respond. He just looked up at the monitor. "Agent Rhodes?" "That is false," Agent Rhodes said. Her voice was as cold and clear as a winter morning. "Deputy Marks, please bring up Exhibit B4. The monitor split screen. On one side was Rhodes. On the other was a screenshot of an email inbox, Harold's email inbox. "On October 18th, Rhodes continued, "my office, in conjunction with the VA Loan Center, sent this automated, registered notification to the email address Mr. Harold Grant has on file. It is a notice of change in fiduciary authority. It explicitly states that the general POA, file number ending in 229, was hereby revoked and superseded by the new limited POA. It also contains, as a digital attachment, a copy of the newly filed Grant Service Trust, with a warning that all assets contained within are legally protected from transfer. Mr. Grant, our system shows you not only received this email, but you opened it." Harold stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing, the proof, the digital receipt, of his own lie. He told me it was fine," Harold said, suddenly panicked, pointing a shaking finger at Kurt Maddox. "He told me the old POA was good enough and that the new papers were just military red tape." Maddox's lawyer shot to his feet. "My client will not be slandered by a desperate, ignorant man. My client was operating on the information the family gave him." "Sit down, counselor," Delgado rumbled, and the lawyer, after a sharp look from Rhodes, did so. Delgado turned his gaze on my brother. "Mr. Mason Grant, your turn. Your father claims he did all this to save you from a threat to your life." Mason's public defender put a hand on his arm, but Mason did not seem to notice. He was in his element. He was the victim. "It is true," Mason said, his voice rising in that whiny, self-pitying tone I had known my whole life. I was in debt. These people, they were threatening me. They were going to kill me. I thought Carly would understand. She's family. I thought she had already agreed with Dad to help me. I did not know. I just thought they were working out the details." He was painting himself as an innocent bystander, a child in the room while the adults handled business. This was my turn. "That is also false," I said. Every head in the room turned to me. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the tension. "Sheriff,
If you look at Exhibit C1 in my file, this is a log of all attempted communications. For 72 hours before the first fraudulent filing, I called both Harold Grant and Mason Grant a combined 14 times. All of them went to voicemail. I sent 8 text messages, asking them to call me, asking what was wrong. I received one single, 5-word text in response, from Mason's phone. Call Dad before you come home. I looked directly at Mason. His eyes were wide. He had forgotten. You did not think I had agreed, I said to him. You knew I had not. You actively, and as a team, avoided my calls. You created a communications blackout so that I could not be informed. You did not want my permission. You were just trying to get the money before I had a chance to say no. Mason shrank in his chair, his face pale. The public defender was staring at him. He had not told his lawyer that part. This is baseless, Maddox's lawyer jumped in, trying to create a diversion. My client, Mr. Maddox, is a respected member of the real estate community. He was simply a broker in this. He took Mr. Harold Grant at his word. He acted in good faith, on behalf of a family that claimed to have full authority. Hannah Cole's lawyer let out a short, sharp laugh that sounded like a bark. In good faith, counselor? Then how do you explain this? He slid a piece of paper into the center of the table. This, he said, his voice dripping with theatrical contempt, is an email your client, Mr. Maddox, sent to my client, Mrs. Hannah Cole, when she expressed concern about the speed of the sale and the absence of the primary owner, and I quote. He read, his voice ringing with indignation. Hannah, do not worry your head about a thing. The father, Harold, has full authority to sign for the daughter. She is a Marine, deployed somewhere. Okinawa. I think she is not going to be back anytime soon. This is a quick cash deal. They need the money. You need the house. We just have to get this closed. Fast. Before the kid has a chance to come home and muddy the waters. End quote. The room was absolutely silent. Maddox's lawyer was staring at the paper. Maddox himself was a peculiar shade of gray. He had just been thrown under the bus, and Hannah's lawyer was driving it. My clients, the lawyer continued, his voice rising. Mr. and Mrs. Cole are victims. They sold their condominium. They liquidated their entire retirement savings to pay the $40,000 cash advance for what they were told was a distressed soldier's family. They were told a story, a lie, by Mr. Grant and Mr. Maddox, about a heroic daughter sacrificing her home to save her family. He paused, then delivered the final blow. Hannah, in her devastation, had given him the most powerful weapon in the room. My client, Mrs. Cole, wept in my office yesterday, and she said something I cannot forget. She said, I cannot believe I was taken advantage of. I trusted them because she was a Marine. I thought, who would lie about something like that? A wave of shame so thick it was almost visible rolled across the room. Deputy Marks looked at the ceiling. Delgado's jaw was tight. Even Maddox's lawyer looked down at his shoes. The lie had not just been about money. They had used the uniform. They had used my service, my absence, as a tool to build trust with their victim. I turned my head and looked, slowly, at my father. He was staring at the shattered remains of his coffee mug from yesterday, metaphorically. You did not just sell my house, Dad, I said, my voice shaking, not with sadness, but with a white-hot, focused rage. You sold my service. You sold my uniform. You sold the honor and the reputation of every person who has ever worn it, all to cover for his weakness. I pointed at Mason. You used my sacrifice as a sales pitch. Harold made a low, wounded sound, like an animal. He finally understood what he had done. Not the crime, the sin. Sheriff Delgado let the words hang for a full 10 seconds. Then he leaned forward. This is where we are, he said, his voice a low growl. Mr. Maddox, you are looking at felony real estate fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy, and Agent Rhodes assures me she will be pursuing federal charges. Mr.
Mason Grant, he continued, you are looking at conspiracy to commit fraud, and as you were the recipient of the illegally obtained funds, you are an active and willing accomplice. Your I did not know defense is not going to stand up in court. Then, he looked at my father. And you, Mr. Grant, you are in the worst position of all. You are the ringleader. You lied to the county. You lied to the bank. You lied to the buyer. And you committed fraud against the Department of Veterans Affairs. That is a federal offense that carries a sentence, I promise you. You are not prepared to serve. The room was silent. The public defender was whispering to Mason. Maddox's lawyer was shuffling papers, his face grim. Then, Delgado's lawyer-like persona faded, and the county sheriff returned. However, the district attorney's office has authorized me to present a potential path for you, Mr. Grant. Harold looked up, his eyes suddenly sharp with a desperate, pathetic hope. The DA, Delgado said, is primarily interested in Mr. Maddox. He is a predator who has been poisoning this county for years. We want him. We want him to go to prison. And we want Mrs. Cole to get her $40,000 back. We want this title clear. He looked at Harold. So here is the one, and only, offer you are going to get, if you cooperate, fully and completely, if you sign a full confession, right now, if you agree to testify, in open court, against Mr. Maddox, detailing how he counseled you to commit this fraud, if you sign over any and all remaining assets to the Grant Service Trust to begin to repay Mrs. Cole, and if you sign this document, permanently and forever relinquishing any right to ever act as a fiduciary for your daughter again, the DA might be willing to recommend a suspended sentence, with probation and community service, on the state charges, the federal charges, he glanced at Rhodes, are another matter, but cooperation is your only hope. It was a plea, a lifeline, and a total, complete annihilation of his pride. Harold stared at the table. I watched him. This was the moment. The man I had seen yesterday on the porch, arrogant, defiant, self-righteous, was gone. In his place was a hollow, terrified old man. I saw, in a sudden, sickening flash, two images of him at once. I saw the man standing in front of me, a criminal brought to heel, and I saw the man from 15 years ago, in the kitchen, flipping pancakes and singing an old, off-key Motown song, the day before I left for Paris Island. The man who had been my father, the man who had tried to sell my future. He sat there, broken, his hands were shaking, resting on the polished table. He looked up, not at Delgado, not at the lawyers. He looked at me. His eyes were red. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a deep, bottomless, horrifying shame. He was seeing me, for the first time, not as a resource, not as his daughter, but as a person he had wronged, completely and irrevocably, worse than any stranger. His voice was a dry, cracking whisper. He was not talking to the sheriff. He was talking to me. I'll sign it, all of it. I'll testify. I'll do whatever you say. He took a ragged breath, and a single hot tear rolled down his creased, ruined face. Just please, do not let her lose anything more. She has lost enough. He put his face in his hands, and his shoulders began to shake. He had finally, completely, broken. The next few months were not a dramatic courtroom battle. There were no surprise witnesses, no shouting matches. It was something far colder, far more final. It was the slow, methodical, administrative grinding of the legal system, a machine that, once activated, does not stop. The local paper, the Redwood Springs Gazette, ran the story on the front page, above the fold. Local VA home fraud. Case involves deployed Marine, my name, my father's name, my brother's name, all there, in black and white, for the entire town to see. The illusion of the Grant family was officially, and very publicly, dead. It ended not with a bang, but with a series of quiet, desperate plea deals. The weight of the evidence, the notarized trust, the revoked POA, the time-stamped emails, the bank records, the audio-recorded voicemails, and my father's own confession was an avalanche. There was no defense. There was only surrender. Kurt Maddox, the shark who had been circling our county for years, was the first to fall. Faced with my father's detailed testimony, Agent Rhodes's federal case, and the mountain of his own incriminating emails to Hannah Cole. His slick lawyer knew the game was over. Maddox pled guilty to felony real estate fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. He was sentenced to 3 years in state prison. He was barred, for life, from ever holding a real estate license in the state of Oregon. His name became a poison word, a permanent warning to every other gray broker in town. Then came my brother, Mason, his public defender, bless her, tried to paint him as the victim, the childlike man who was led astray by his father and his own fear. It did not work. The $40,000 wire transfer receipt with his name on it was impossible to spin. He was found guilty of conspiracy and receiving stolen property. The judge, seeing a 40-year-old man with no job and a history of leeching, was not gentle. Mason was sentenced to 5 years of strict probation, ordered to pay back the full $10,000 he had received, and, in what was for him the cruelest punishment of all, was legally barred from all unsupervised financial contracts. He was assigned a probation officer who monitored his bank account weekly. For the first time in his adult life, he was forced to get, and keep, a real taxable, minimum wage job. And finally, my father, Harold Grant. His cooperation, as Sheriff Delgado had promised, was his only salvation. He pled guilty to everything. He testified against Maddox, his voice a dry, cracking monotone in the courtroom. He stood before the judge, a hollowed-out man. The judge took his age, his lack of a prior record, and his full, immediate cooperation into account. He was found guilty of felony fraud against a service member and the federal government. He received a suspended sentence, 10 years of probation, a crippling $50,000 fine, and 2,000 hours of mandatory community service. The judge also ordered him to attend weekly, court-mandated financial counseling and psychological therapy for the duration of his probation. His name, his social security number, everything about him was flagged. He could not so much as open a new credit card without a review. The shame of his conviction was a permanent, indelible stain on his record, one that would follow him for the rest of his life. As for Hannah Cole and her husband, the system offered a clumsy, imperfect justice. Through the state's Victim Compensation Fund and the assets seized from Kurt Maddox, they were eventually reimbursed for a significant portion of their $40,000 loss. It was not all of it, but it was enough. They decided, understandably, that Redwood Springs was no longer home. They bought a small house in a different town, 3 counties over. Hannah and I kept in touch. Not often, but with a strange, quiet understanding. We were the 2 survivors of a storm we did not create, a legal bond forged in the wreckage of my family's greed. The final act of the court was the cleanest. With a single stamp from the judge, every document Harold, Mason, and Kurt had created was declared null and void, an act of fraud from inception, the fraudulent sale, the predatory lien, the Grant family trust, all of it, legally erased. The court affirmed that the one, true, and legal owner of the property at 1225 Cedar Street was the Grant Service Trust, and that I, Carly Grant, was its sole, permanent, and untouchable beneficiary. It was over. I got the keys back on a Tuesday. The day was crisp, the sky a bright, painful blue. Sheriff Delgado, in a final act of kindness, met me at the house himself. He did not send a deputy. He just pulled up in his cruiser, walked to the front door, and used a pair of bolt cutters to snap the official Lis Pendens lock that had been on the door for months. He handed me a new set of keys, the metal cold in my palm. "She's all yours, Sergeant," he said, his voice gentle. "Welcome home. For real this time. I nodded, unable to speak. He tipped his hat, got back in his car, and drove away. I stood on the porch for a long time. The same porch. I put the new key in the lock. It turned smoothly. I pushed the door open. The house was empty. Hannah's boxes, the U-Haul trailer. All of that was long gone. The house was just a shell. It smelled of dust, cold air, and faintly of the industrial cleaner the county had used. The silence was absolute. I walked through the empty rooms, my footsteps echoing on the bare hardwood floors I had installed myself. I saw the evidence of the invasion. In the living room, I saw the 4 deep, rectangular impressions in the carpet where Hannah's heavy sofa had rested for just a few days. I saw the faint, square outline on the wall where a picture had hung. In the kitchen, I saw a long, dark scratch on the linoleum, near the back door, where they must have dragged an appliance. These were the scars, the physical proof of what they had done, of the violation. I ran my hand along a patch of wall near the entryway. The paint was a slightly different shade, a hasty touch-up job Harold must have done to make it look sellable. It was all evidence of a life I had built, interrupted. I was standing in the kitchen, the room where I had dreamed of making coffee on weekend mornings, when I saw it. In the exact center of the clean, empty countertop, there was a single, small, white envelope. My stomach clenched. I picked it up. My name. Carly was written on the front in a neat, cursive hand. I recognized it from the one letter Hannah had sent me. I opened the flap. Inside, there was a simple, blank note card. I unfolded it. There was no "Dear Carly," no "Sincerely." There was just one line, written in blue ink. "Thank you for not letting us sink with them." I closed my eyes. I held the card to my chest. The weight of those 7 words was heavier than my sea bag. I was standing there, by the window that looked out onto the street, when a familiar vehicle pulled up. Harold's old, beat-up Ford truck. It idled across the street for a long, painful minute. He got out. I did not move. I just watched, hidden by the shadow of the empty room. He looked small. He was wearing a bright, humiliatingly orange vest. His community service, no doubt, picking up trash along the highway. He walked, not to the house, but to the mailbox at the curb. His shoulders were slumped. He opened the small metal door, slid a single, white, business-sized envelope inside, and closed it, the clang sharp in the afternoon quiet. He did not look at the house. He did not knock on the door. He did not try to see me. He just got back in his truck, turned it around, and drove away. I let out a breath I had not known I was holding. I felt, not triumph, not the sweet taste of revenge. I felt a profound, bottomless, sad relief. The boundary was finally drawn. The line was clear. He was still, biologically, my father, but he was no longer my responsibility. He had no more power. He was just a man, in a truck, who did not even have the right to knock on my door. I walked outside, down the path, and opened the mailbox. The envelope was from the county clerk. I opened it. Inside was a single, notarized document, a final, court-ordered, confirmation of fiduciary release. It was the last paper from his plea deal, a legal confirmation that he had transferred all remaining rights and claims, that he was, in the eyes of the law, a permanent stranger to my financial life. He had just, in silence, delivered his own emancipation papers. I walked back inside, holding that paper. I stood in the center of my empty living room, the afternoon sun casting long, golden rectangles on the floor. It was so quiet. And in that quiet, I finally finished the thought I had started on this very porch, all those months ago. I whispered it, to the empty walls. "The house," I said. "The house that you two thought you sold. The thing is, it was never just a house. It was a compass. It was the only clear, true thing I had left. It was a moral compass, and I used it, from 4,000 miles away, to finally see where you were and where I was. It was the only thing that could show me, in black and white, who was truly on my side. And who had never been? I walked to the back door and opened it. Stepping out onto the small, concrete patio, I took a deep, clean breath of the Redwood Springs air. I looked at the peeling paint, the sagging gutter I still needed to fix, the maple tree I had planted. That house was never just walls and a roof. It was my proof. It was the physical evidence that the sacrifice of a soldier is not just a line item on a family budget. It is not an ATM. It is not an asset that you can just sell when you get into a jam. It was my value, made real, and I had taken it back. I walked back inside, closed the door, and leaned against the frame. I closed my eyes. I'm home. Thank you for listening to this story, and please comment where you are listening from to connect and share your thoughts. Subscribe to the Lila Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and support us further by hitting the hype button so this story and this video can be heard by more people.